And labeling these as being clean reels. I'm going to start this series with the Lews speed spool. It's the Xfinity XF1SH. It's the speed spool SLP. This is this guy here. This is kind of what it looks like. We'll take some pictures of it before I get started. Normally I pull all the line off. With this person, they want to kind of keep their line. They want to put that money back in that line, which I understand completely. I'll show you my setup here, and hopefully we'll be able to get some good, I'm going to do some pictures too along the way, so that way you can see still pictures of the things that we're doing, or that I'm doing, excuse me. So you could have step by step by step, and you could actually see the parts as they sit. So I'm between every part of changing this, I'm going to do my best to grab a snapshot, put it on the screen, and you can pause it and see and look at it when you need it. Now I'll show you my other setup here in just a second. So I have all my cleaning tools and stuff set out. I'm using this stand here so I could take some pictures. But as you can see, I got my cleaning stuff out. I've got my rag. I got my camera's mounted going down that way. I'm going to have to try to have footage there and there. So hopefully I will not miss anything and my hands will not be in the way. And if they are, I'll have another angle so that way you'll be able to see it. All right, let me get started. All right. Hopefully my little lamp that I have here is going to give enough light so we can see how we're going to do this. First things first, I like to break it all the way down. So we just have just the outside. This is for the braking system. So that way you can, that's part of the braking system. On this side here is the other quick dial. And this one just puts a little tension on your spool so that way you don't backcast or backlash, excuse me. And now what I like to do is I like to lay it out in the order that I take it out. And you see, is here? This is just a safety. This helps keep from having the actual spinner part of your reel to come off. And that just slides off as it's got different gears, different teeth in there, so it can line up. You can help you line it up a little easier. Then we'll remove this. This is one of the tools I talked about that I didn't use very often, but I'm going to use it here because it actually goes over this so good. That one's a little too tight. That normally don't need it. You don't normally need it that tight. I don't know if that was factory or if it was from the last time it was done, but you really don't need it that tight. And basically I loosened it up and then I'm taking the rest of the way off with my finger. You see there's dirt and grime in there. We'll clean that up. As you can see here, this is a piece that a lot of people get wrong when they put it back in. Let's see if I can adjust the light a little bit. And we'll take a picture of that. Drag. So this is your tensioner on your drag. So this will actually spin the whole thing. So what I like to do is two things. You can put your finger in here so it holds this bar that rides back and forth, and as you can, well, if you can see in that camera, but it's real gross in there, and hold your spool so that way it doesn't spin while you're taking off your tensioner. Now if I say something or call this something that it's not, forgive me, I'm self-taught, so I don't know, I might be wrong or I might have something incorrect, but basically that's going to come off. Now here's where you want to be careful. See, that followed this off. You do not want to get these incorrect. If you put these on wrong, then you will find yourself having other issues. I wanted to go ahead and take a picture there so y'all could have that. These are also unique. See, they're not perfectly flat. They actually have curve to them. And they actually need to go back on the way they come off. And you can see these have that gap when they're touching. I normally take these off and lay them on my mat the way they come off. We're going to slide this over so you can see. Alright, so now this is the outside. This has got everything off that you can take off that gives you just what you have here. I like to break them down side per side. So to release this side here, to take this side off, what you want to do is there's a bar right here. It's a spring-loaded bar. As you see, it's spring-loaded. You pull this bar and you twist this up. And it's hard to do around the camera, but when you do, this comes off. This is your magnetic braking system from this side. I take this, I'll put it on this side over here. This is the spool. Spool has two different sides, only goes in one way. I don't know if you can see the junk on that spool or not, but it also has a bearing here. Alright, and we'll oil and grease that bearing as well. Alright, that's pretty much everything off of this side. Now what we want to do is we want to open up this part. I do not want to slip. I don't like to scar up the screws. So when I realize that I'm slipping, I'm going to switch over to my larger tool, which is reversible. Gives me a bigger flathead. And this is held together with a screw here, and screw here, and a screw here. So as I'm breaking this down, I'm going to line these screws up on this rag. So completed, but a lot of these you don't have to break down. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. This back screw back here. So I'll go back over that real quick. So let's go back over this right here. I'm holding it together because there's springs in the inside. I don't want it to pop out. So you have to take out this lower one, this one here, a top one, the one on the back, and then the one here on the bottom. I want to slightly jiggle this and wiggle it. And then once that comes free, it kind of just slides all the way up. This one stayed with it. This is the spring-loaded button that releases the other side. If you notice, there's more pieces here. Let me take a quick picture so you can see this. This is part of your braking system in here, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and break this all the way down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up over here in the way that I took it off. And we'll take another picture so that way anybody that's looking at this can see the locking system. And I'm going to show you this too. Oops. So this actually goes on. I'll show you this. Okay, let me make a little bit of a update here. I put it back together and things didn't quite work. When you tighten up the drag on it, it actually caused the reel not to reel right. And I realized that I actually had this plate right here upside down. The raised part that you see here should be up. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that so that way anyone that saw this wouldn't have the same problem, think that their reel was broken. So I want to go ahead and do this real part to plug in where we were going through that, and so that way you could see that this is actually with the rise up. We're going to clean this pad because that's the actual braking system, but see how that goes in? And then this piece is actually just stuck because it has a little grease on it. And then there's another pad on the bottom of this here. We'll knock the grease off of this because this is also part of the braking system. Now that this piece is off here, what we're going to do is I'm going to carefully remove this part with the springs, 2 springs. I'm going to place them over here. Then this whole plastic piece pulls up with this gear. That piece comes off like that. That's how This is the bottom, this is the top, and it goes back in there just like it come off. And you'll see that in the picture I took with the other one. This has a lot of, this is where a lot of the slowness gets and a lot of the grind gets, is in this thing here. Here's the problem. As you can see, it's very, very difficult to get to. However, we do need to take it off. We do need to get access to that. We'll take the smaller one and we'll pop this C-clip. It's got a groove that fits in here, and if you just take your screwdriver, there's like a little notch, and that will, little notches in there, and you can just kind of pry and pull that off. Now I pulled it off toward it, but if you spin it around, then it'll go ahead and fall off, and that's your C-clip. So now you flip it back over, this is the gear for that, and you can actually pull it. Now when I pulled that out, there's a spot that holds this. I'm trying to see if I can get my light just right. See that groove there? I actually hold this lip on this plastic piece here that is going to slide in to that. Now it has a washer on the top. We don't want to lose that, but this is the actual slide in, and it is a certain way that that fits in there. Anyway, there's a bar in this that we have to get out and we need to clean so we can pull this whole bar, this whole thing out. So I'm switching this over so I can use the Phillips head part, because this little screw here is a Phillips head, and if you don't have one that fits just right, then you need to find one that fits it better, because if you don't, then you'll strip that out, and you don't want to strip that out. I'm going to take this bar that can be cleaned. I'm going to put it right here with this so I know that that screw goes with that part. And if you can't see that, if you didn't see me put it down, I've just basically done what I've done up here and separated it. Now go back to this part. This now can be removed, and in here you'll find, let's see, probably need to use my tweezers, but there's normally a cap on the top of this right here, and you see if when I touch it, it went down. I'm going to try to move this around, and you notice that comes up, and I'm going to try to use my nail, see if I can get a better light on it. Okay, yeah. Alright, so that's going to work now. So I have longer fingernails, which I shouldn't be using like this, but I do. And I'm going to use the tweezers to grab this. And you see that teeth has to go back in just like that, come out right there. Now it could be flipped over and go back in, but it has to go back in. Let's see here. We're going to remove this bar right here. Let's take, so you can see it only goes in one way, only fits. If you'll notice that end is tapered and the other one is not, so it has to go back in that way. That bar will not come out if this white piece is in there. It is meant to hold that bar into place. Now this should pretty much slide right on out of this, just like that. And you see how that come off? This bar is pointing up, and that one's pointing up while this direction, and this should pull all the way out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this sleeve so I can actually clean the sleeve and get the oil and the grease and all out of the sleeve. This one has a pin in the end of this here, slides all the way out. Let's get our tweezers again. This pin slides all the way out. We're going to put that right over here so I'll know exactly what that is, what that's for. And that's going to allow this gear to come off. And then that's going to allow this to slide through this just like this. And this one's kind of unique. This one actually has a bearing set in here. Just to make sure that you see this, I'm going to push it out this end. We'll take a picture. You can go as far down as you want on these to break them all the way down. I personally find that at this point there's no need in removing any of these other things. There are bearings underneath here. And what I'm going to do now is to break this out of here. I may have to go with a smaller Smaller. Nah, that's actually a pretty good fit. And that way you can see this. I am not going to remove the button because there's really no need in it. As you can see, there's very little in here. I think I need to replace the batteries in my light. It's getting a little weak. The light seems to be much better. Again, we'll take a quick little snapshot of this. Now, and then what we'll do is we'll start cleaning. Alright. Just so y'all know what happened there, I pulled that up. This beard actually sits in this hole, and this sits on the bottom. And we're going to clean that. We're going to put this all back together. If you really wanted to, you could pop that C pin or that circle pin out, pull all these gears and all off, clean all that in there. There's really nothing in there. I'm going to start with this right here. This speed cleans. This is actually designed for these bait casters. It takes away the dirt and the grime, and it actually, unlike some of the cleaners that you have to spray and then wash and then rinse and then dry, you don't have to do that with this. This was designed just to kind of spray on like this. And what I want to do is I'm gonna hit the whole thing, because I'm gonna go ahead and scrub it all the way down. Again, like I said, I'm not breaking loose the button just because I don't feel like there's a need in it. Anyway, that's got it on there. This is going to help get some of the dirt and the grime and everything out. But this stuff will actually get in here. You can really kind of scrub these little areas with this. Now I'm holding my thumb over it just so I didn't, I got a good tight seal on it. And then what I'm going to do is be real careful. I don't want to knock that spring loose. And I'll start scrubbing the outside. And then what I'll do is I'll go back in with my rag and some Q-tips and kind of get back into those little creases and holes and different things like that. But when I'm going to clean one, I want to clean it all the way. I want to go every little spot that I can get, that I can clean up and get some. Alright, so I've already scrubbed it down pretty good, and I've sprayed it, and I've used a Q-tip to kind of get down in these sections here. But I wanted to show you, just take your time. Don't be in a real big hurry. Really kind of scrub, get the grime off. It just, not only does it make it look a little better, it's just good practice. But these little grooves and these little spots where we've sprayed and cleaned, just take your Q-tip and go around in there real good. Get all the, where you've scrubbed with the toothbrush, and get all that stuff out of there, in here. Be careful with your springs. Reach in here. You can pop the button back and forth and get in there once it's moved. And I'll take this pick right here, and I'll get in there if there's like a load of grease. So it's 2 picks. This thing right here, just because I had it, it makes it easier. You can scratch a little harder with this one. You got to be real careful. Once I have one or section cleaned, I like to put the oil or the grease back in the spot that it needs to be in. As you can see here, and I'll show you, pressing the button, this is a moving tool here. Alright, this stuff slides back and forth, as you can see. Back and forth. I did see something when I did that. I see a little more moisture there. I don't want to leave any of that cleaning solution in there. Even though breaking this oil down, or this grease down just a little, which it will, if you don't get it all the way out, it's not going to hurt anything. But it's best way is not to do it. Now, the spring moves. I want to put a little this. Some people call it real butter. It's like a synthetic oil, grease that helps that. I put a little bit in there in each spot it moves. I'm going to put a little bit in the inside, so that way when that moves up, and then I'm going to come up here, put a little bit on the inside, and then around this edge. So that way, clicking the button, it has a spring tension on it, but clicking the button will be smooth. Now, we cleaned off some of the the grease here. So I want to put some of that back, but very little, because this part doesn't need that much. But see the difference in the click. The spring here moves. I'm going to do the same thing for this spring. A little bit there, a little bit in the spring. So that way, over time, the more it moves, it'll break down and be ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly spray it. Take my toothbrush. After lightly spraying it, take my toothbrush and kind of give it just a little scrape there on the outside. And I like to hold it with that rag because of the cleaning solution on your hands. It kind of. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wipe that off the best I can. This oil, this real oil, it's different than the grease. This goes for bearings, and I like to coat it. Just barely give it enough squeeze. And you can see how it's just kind of getting liquidy on my finger. And trying to do this behind the camera is a little tricky. I'm going to do both sides. And it fell into my hand again. Now, with my fingers still oily, I want to take this and I just want to work it in. I want to spin it in my fingers. I want to get it just worked all the way in so that it actually drops all the way down into those bearings. Simply put it right back to where it was at, which is that spot right there. This is the neck part right here. And what I'm doing is on my cloth here, I've got cleaning solution already on my cloth. So I'm going to just going to wipe it down because I got the cleaning solution already on it, all the way up and down this, because I'm going to oil it all the way back. And this gear was almost dry when we come in here. So what I want to do now is I'm going to actually take this grease again, and I'm going to put this in just roll it, squirt it in there. Every teeth needs to have some of this grease in it. And all it's going to do is prolong the plastic and the metal and keep it from corroding. And then I like to take my finger and just kind of dab it and work it on, which I've got another finger on the back side back here touching it, dragging it. So we're spreading it out across there. So there's those extra holes there right up under that. Not the big one, but the one that's right up under the screw hole that we had. That will sit right into that spot, which will then allow us to be able to put our screws right back in. There we go. Alright. I don't want to tighten it all the way down, but I do want to get it started so it holds its spot. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. Just snug. I don't want to put too much pressure on that plastic. I just want to get it to where it doesn't spin. Then I'm going to come over here and finish up this side. The next thing we want to do is put this back. Now this hadn't been cleaned yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rag and I'm going to actually not spray that, but spray the rag. Alright, so my rag actually has a little bit of cleaning solution on it, and then I'm going to clean this bar because it actually fits in the other piece and slides. We'll put some grease on here. A little bit will do you. It ain't going to take a lot. And then you just kind of rub it all over. And then what that's going to do is that's going to go up here in this section up here. It's going to slide through and fit right in that hole. See how it sits over here? It sits over here. That end was tapered. It only goes in that way. Going the other way, it won't work the way. It won't go all the way through over here. That spot that I sprayed to clean that other, I'm going to take this little guy. I'm going to really kind of scrub him. I'm going to use my fingernails or whatever. If the grease that was on here and the oil is too thick for me to just kind of wipe out of there, off of this where I sprayed the wet on the rag, then what I'll do is I'll take my toothbrush. I'll take my finger and clean in there like that. I'm sorry if I didn't show you the first time, but some of these have holes in the back that have springs in them. Some of them have plates on top of those springs. This one does not. This one's just a solid piece. It doesn't have the extra. As you can see there, I didn't quite get all that old out. That actually makes a difference in the spinning of it. So now you see we got all that out of there. There's no junk or anything left in there. And I'm just going to put it right back down there because we're going to put grease on that. I always like to wipe down everything. That's just a plastic cap. We'll look down in there. Looks like there's a little stuff in there. So what we'll do is we'll take, again, a Q-tip. Buy the cheap ones. There's no need in buying the expensive ones. You said there was a little dirt in there. I got that cleaned out. This guy here holds quite a bit of the grease and some of the oil. So, and if you'll notice, there's dirt and grime and junk all in that right there. We want to get this all the way clean, include the line hole. So what I do is I just very gently give that a little bit of a spray, and I'll scrub this. I'll scrub this right here with a toothbrush all the way around the Q-tip. See, so you can really kind of dig around in there and get all of this out, and through here, and grime and junk in there. And I apologize for pulling away from the camera. I don't do that on purpose. And now there's a little bitty hole there with this bar, which I put the bar back in too early, but I wanted to just, because I oiled it already, I wanted to get it in its spot. But if you'll, there's grime and junk in there. So one of the things you can do is take one of your Q-tips. I'll put this here so you can see it, and pull the Q-tip, most of the Q-tip off. I normally leave a little more on there, but then you can actually, and it has a little bit of roughness in it, so you can actually push it through. See all that stuff that come out? And then I'll take my rag and kind of wipe that off so I don't pull it back through. The synthetic, if you want to go buy the synthetic, they offer many different types and shapes. You can do this. Now this synthetic one that I use here has some real grease on it, so but that's not going to hurt anything right here, not in this spot. So I just kind of went in there just a little bit to make sure there was no grime. This will also go through those. They make these with points. They make these with different things. You can get them off of Amazon. Real, you know, I'm not going to say super cheap, but they're pretty cheap. This needs to be completely greased. There's moving parts that's going to go through every spot of this. So what I'm going to do is I like to go ahead and just kind of squirt a couple of dots in there in each little spot that I can, because you want this to move just as freely. You don't want to have anything in there. So then that's where this guy comes from, and then I'm just going to really just get it in there and soak it up and get it all over every little piece in every little spot that I can get it in. And I'm not putting it on thick. I'm actually putting it on a little thinner than normal, because even though this moves, it moves on the outside of this other, and I'll grease that up on the outside a little better, just like I did on this pole. So now the next thing I like to do is when I get done with a part, I like to put it back together. So what I want to do here now is I want to start building all these pieces back together. I still can't put that in yet, because this over here needs to be in before this goes in, because if not, then it doesn't set, or you won't be able to get that shaft back in there. Like I said, just lightly spray it. I'm going to rub it on both sides, and then if I can hold on to it, I'm going to scrub it and roll it, scrub it and roll it, scrub it and roll it. And I know it's hard to see, but ultimately it's just the bearing in there. Alright, now I'm going to wipe it all the way back down again and try to move off the cleaning section on the side of that and wipe it all the way down into a clean spot on here. It's a couple of little drops. Doesn't take much on both sides. And then in my fingers I like to really work that oil in and roll that bearing around. So in this gear here, if you remember when we took it when we took it off, those are showing up. So there's none on that side. That side's flat, but those are showing up because there's a pin that actually sits down in that and stays and holds it. Then we have this pin. Now this pin, I'm just going to wipe it, just roll it around in my fingers just to make sure it's clear. We want to clean this part. And this part here, what I want to do is now I'm gonna spray it pretty good, because it has a bunch of junk in there. I want to get it all cleaned out. And this, I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to the Q-tip, because it's such a tight fit that I just want to go ahead and just get all that grime and dirt out. I'm going to switch over to a little cleaner spot on my rag and really just kind of wipe all the cleaning stuff out. So now what I'm going to do is I want to put a little oil. I'm sorry, let me reply it in a little more grease, not oil. I'll show you what we'll do with that oil in just a little bit. But this is where the bearing's going to sit. This is where the bearing goes back in. And I'll show you that now. Just put a little bit on the outside just to make it easier because the shaft's actually going to slide up in there. But see how that fits in there just perfectly. That's how that's supposed to go. I'm going to take the grease again. I'm going to put some in here, and I'm putting, I don't know if you can really see. Let's see if that, see how much I put in there. It's actually not too shabby. Now I'm going to take this guy, and I use this one because the cotton swabs, the ones that actually have cotton in them, they seem to leave a little bit of cotton residue sometimes when you're using this grease, and it kind of sticks to it, and I'm not a big fan of it. So I'm going to just spread that out in there. It's okay if it gets on the outside because it's going to slide up and down it, so you're going to actually grease the outside eventually anyway. You're going to clean this, but I'm going to spray that pretty good because you want to get in those creases. And I'm going to take take the toothbrush here and kind of knock around in every one of those grooves, and then we're just going to kind of really wipe all that cleaning solution off and try to get into the grooves pretty good and get most of that stuff wiped off of there. But now I'll go ahead and add the grease before we put it in there, and as you see, I'm actually putting it on this pretty heavy. This is one thing that you kind of want to make sure that you have a good amount of grease in, but you'll see why I say this is you want to fill those grooves. That's what it looks like when that's what it looks like when I have that in there. This goes in this way. Doesn't matter, you know, but this matters actually, but see how it goes through, and I'm keeping my finger on the bearing so that way it goes all the way through. We've already cleaned this part. However, these gears, they need to move smoothly. They use plastic now. Some of the odor some of the odor reels that I've done, they're metal, and I find that plastic does get brittle if you don't keep them, you know, oiled. So if you don't keep the grease in this plastic, this could literally be your downfall when using these style, is because when this plastic gets brittle and it loses its like oiliness, then it's done. Flat side goes back down next to the bearing. Tiny little pin that they have that goes in here, and there's a slot. See, this goes in, and if you'll notice those little grooves that's in the top, those little spin bars, that locks in. The pin slides into those so the pin doesn't come out, and that actually sticks back out that end. And my fingers, you see I've got grease all over my fingers. I'm not going to waste it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that tight. I don't want that pin to come out or lose that pin, but I want to rub all the extra grease that I have on my fingers around this. It's going to make a difference in the way that it works and slides inside of this. This goes in this side because this gear touches this. This is how this actually moves. And this part's got to face here because that other pin goes in. So we're going to just slide this back in through both sides. Alright. And what's going to happen is this is going to sit all the way flush. If it's not flush, then it's not right. And see, I wiggled that around till I got it in there, till it sits in there just right. That's just a washer. There's no need to do anything to that washer. That washer's clean. Put a little grease on it from what's left on my fingers. This right here doesn't, it's pretty clean, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wipe it anyway, just to wipe it down and put some fresh grease on it. I hold my finger over the back side, and if you'll notice, there's one little gap there. So what we want to do is we want to line this up so it fits correctly back into this hole, and it all lines up and snaps back in the way it's supposed to, because if it doesn't, then that bar is not going to spin the right way. It's going to slide around and bounce, and which is going to cause other problems. You're going to take your little washer that goes back on, and then the last thing you're going to put on here
is going to be your little C. And if you don't do it just right, it doesn't fit. So if you got something that's not fitting right, or it's not lining up quite the right way, take a minute, look back at your photos, and make sure that you have this in the right way and all the pieces are lining up. Okay, so now I'm going to take my multi-tool. I'm going to grab the outside of it and grab the pin and just kind of pop it in. You see it snap, now it's in there tight, and you can let go of that because now all of that's pinned back together correctly. We already cleaned this one, and now what we want to do is we want to put this back. This is going to need some grease on it because it needs to move. This goes in here just like this. See how I lined that up to kind of be up and down, just like that. Now I've got oil and grease, or I got grease all over that. Now I pushed that in and I moved it until it fell into a groove, because that's what you want to do. What I like to do at this point is I like to come in here with the oil, and this is just going to free up this grease a little. It's going to break it down just a little. And I like to put a little bit in there and just kind of rub that around until it drops in there and kind of gets around. You take your cap this back off, and this is what this is going to do, is going to keep it from allowing that pin to move up. So, and this doesn't have to be real tight, this has to be a little. And if you'll notice how the oil kind of come out of there, there's got a little dot in there, and I do it before and try to, instead of ringing that dot, it's almost miserable. You need one of the needle, you know, oilers or whatever it's called, to go in there. I don't like doing that. I just rather take the top off, put a little drop in there, and put it back on. This gear right here, I'm going to spin it so that way it gets oil all over the place. It's already really smooth, but I want to go ahead and run it up and down here again. Now, to make sure that we're really smooth, in here, you know, we put the grease, and now I want to put a couple of drops of this oil, just a few drops, not much, just a few. And basically what that does is it just, I don't know, it gives it a little more extra lubricant, I guess, and makes this right here such a smooth. And like I said, I really am barely putting a drop, and then I run it back and forth just to make sure that I get all that separated and spread out real good in there. Now we have this piece, basically same thing as I've done with the outer shell. I don't have enough room to do all this, but basically what I've done with the outer shell, just a little squirt. And since it's not like crazy little pieces, then I can rub this down with my rag, and now it's time to put it back. And if you remember, one of the reasons I took it off is because I couldn't access this plate. So what this does is we're going to go right back to where we were at. This one actually goes on this side. We're going to clean this part up and re-grease it. Now, if you'll notice, this thing right here doesn't have a lot of grease, but this does. That's not right. This should have just as much as this. Before we try to scrub it or do anything, we're just going to try to get as much as this loose grease that we can out of there. Q-tip helps pretty good. You can take one of your semi-dirty Q-tips and just really kind of dig out the old grease that's in here, you know, just a little spray, scrub it a little, and then again we want to wipe this back down one more time with a clean spot of your rag. And we want to put a good amount of the grease in here, but this one just happens to be orange. That's just the way that they have it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly set it to where it's supposed to go. It's not even really on there, but it's sitting there so I can get this cleaned and prepared. So basically I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wipe this down, put a blast, scrub. Now we want to draw all that off. So I'm going to again put on grease, just kind of rolling it around in there. Then down here, the big part goes down. Top part up here is going to connect to the other gear, and this is going to sit right in there, just like that. Putting them in there. Now this again is a moving part, but these are moving parts. So, but it's not a big moving part. But I wanted to just put a little of this grease in here, because it is a moving part, I wanted just a little lubrication in there. This was the next thing we pulled off. As you see, not got much oil on it or anything like that, or grease, excuse me. So, but I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down. It's just a clean wipe. I don't see any grime or anything on it. I do want to grease these because these are teeth. A little grease in each one of these. These are greased up, and please forgive the dogs. There's cars going up and down the road, and there's a gap. There's like a, it's not perfectly circle, it's oblong. So it has to sit in a certain spot there. This is part of the braking system. I'm going to wipe off some of the grime and stuff that's on there, but I am not going to remove that grease. I want that grease to be there just a little bit. And this is perfectly round, so it goes down there and sits on the top, or not the braking system, excuse me. This is a part of the drag system. Now that piece is different, so you want to make sure that you pay attention. Update here. I put it back together and things didn't quite work the way. When you tighten up the drag on it, it actually causes the reel not to reel right. And I realized that I actually had this plate right here upside down. The raised part that you see here should be up. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that, so that way anyone that saw this wouldn't have the same problem and realize and think that their rod was broken. Think that their reel was broken. So I want to go ahead and do this real part to plug in where we were going through that, and so that way you could see that this is actually with the rise up, and that will fix any of that problem if you run into that. Now you see this, you really want to clean this off. Try not to get any cleaner or oil, grease, or anything in there. And I'm going to make sure that I go in here with the cleanest part of my rag, and sometimes I'll even get a different one depending on how bad it is. I'm going to put this back in here while I spray and work on that, because I don't want to get any of the cleaner in there. So I'm going to really be real careful. You can actually probably spray your toothbrush. It might make that a little easier for you. That comes up, so I want to be real careful. And when you're putting this one on, you really want to get it in the teeth, but you really don't want to get it on the top. The bottom is not as important, but I'm going to wipe it back off after I get done. So now I'm going to just lightly tap this in and be really careful, because I don't want to get it on the top or the bottom. That's not really. And that's it. Now, and in this top plate, it actually has a tapered side, so it goes in there a certain way. Now you may have to kind of adjust so those teeth line up and all, and goes right back in there. Now basically I start by just kind of wiping down the sides and a clean spot on my rag, and that has the cleaning solution still on it. This has a tapered end on it up here, and down here it's round, so that way you can see it only has to spin a certain way. I'm going to take one of my Q-tips, and I'm going to just really kind of clean out all the edges on this here, like this. And I want to go around the inside. And it really, and the outside actually, but it really truly doesn't need to be done. But since I took most of the oil and grease off of that, I wanted to put it back. This little washer was next. Again, with this little washer, I'm just going to wipe it off and clean it off. And then we'll drop that right back down on the top. Now, as you can see, there's some grease and stuff all over the place in there. I'm just going to go ahead and do a little quick wipe out. And see, there's parts that's still in there, okay? And one of them is bearings for the brake, and the other one is the anti-reverse bearing in there. So these bearings only turn one way. And if you'll notice, they actually don't look very good. They're kind of gross and kind of grimy, all right? And these bearings are not the same as these bearings, because these bearings here I will use grease and oil. I'm hoping that the video is good. I couldn't see behind the camera. I've got it mounted back and forth, so I'm hoping that between the two that the video is still going to be good. At this point, what we want to do is we want to take out this set of bearings for the braking and this set of bearings for the anti-reverse. But what they have is a band to hold this bearing in place. It is a circular band. Let's see. Sometimes that's what this little pig is for. See that circular band? I'm going to bring my finger down to it so I don't lose it. And I still almost lost it, but that's what holds that one in. Alright, so that one just popped right out afterwards. Alright, so that's out. Now what we need to do is I need to get this guy out of there. I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but that has a tapered edge, and I was able to press with my palm through, push it through, no damage to the edge, and I'll show you here. Won't have any damage to this either. And see, no damage there. Now, before we get to cleaning that, I'm going to set that there. That goes in a certain way. Alright, nice clean rag. We'll take this. It's got nothing in it other than the bar that goes across, which I'm just going to wipe it off, and we'll put more grease right back on that. It really is just to move up and down just a little, so it's not very, very vital. And I mean I could take that out, but there's really no reason. I'm gonna just kind of give this a good spray. I'm trying to catch all my spray. I don't want it to go over anything else. And we'll just give it a little scrub. We want to just get any loose oil, a little grime out of there that you may find. There's no need in having any of that because we'll put it all back with the other. And here on the outside, because I like to, when I do something for somebody, I like to send it back better than I get it. So even though the inside is all done, it makes a difference when you get it back, and it's cleaner and nicer than when they send it to you to make sure it's clean. Now, if you're not doing this for somebody else and you're doing it for yourself, it doesn't hurt to have a nice new looking reel to take out to the lake and cast around, make you feel like you got a brand new one. I'll be honest with you, I like going to pawn shops and seeing what they have, flea markets, seeing what they have, and buying older and some that most people will turn their nose up to and not want to have anything to do with because it looks gross and old, and then they think that it's not very good because it's gross and old, and then come to find out once you clean it up, it's a jewel. I've done that a few times. I've actually even pulled them out of the lake to a point where they had true crust over everything, and it was really gross, but spent some time on it, cleaned it out. It was a rod and a bait caster. It was a right-handed bait caster, so I'm a left-handed fisher. Even though I write and do everything else right-handed, I fish left-handed. It's something I grew up doing, so that's what I still do. But anyway, I gave that to a friend of mine, which he actually is the one that found it, and I was the one that just kind of cleaned it. I'm just going to lightly blast this, just a little, and then I want to scrub it. I'm wiping off my toothbrush. I don't want to put anything in there that's not shouldn't be. Light scrub. Light scrub. I'm going to wipe that off. I want to make sure all the cleaning solution's off of that. And then the oil. Just a dab on both sides. And I like to roll that around in my fingers real good and let that really get down into the works of that. And that's going to go right back where we just took it out of. We have that band. That band should clip on one side. If I quit dropping it. And then it'll pop in on the other side and fit right down in that groove. And that's exactly what you want to happen, so that way this bearing stays in spot. Alright, now this one's tricky. So first thing I like to do is wipe everything off of it, number one. Now, the next thing I like to take my rag or my shirt or whatever you have, and like I said, now you have to be careful here because these are anti-reverse bearings. So I want to just barely kind of pull them up in there, and I'm going to test it, and it go that way, it spins that way, then spin that way. So you only want to spin this the one way that it wants to spin. If not, you will find yourself knocking out, see if you can see those in there, knocking those out. Alright, now I'm going to go away from that edge because I didn't like that in there. I'm going to go up here where just a little better. Test it. Roll it the way it wants to roll. I'm going to slide it down a little tighter, but not too tight, because I do not want to pop those out. I popped those out before. You can get them back in, but it ain't fun. So that's how we're going to clean that. I'm not spraying any cleaner in there. I'm not putting anything else in there. I'm just running that through the shirt and around and around. I'm going to add to it though. So what I'm going to do now is there's I think this is a 7. I think this is a 7 bearing one. So I'm just going to squeeze some of this stuff in here. Just like this. I'm going to squeeze some of this in here. And then I'm going to take the non-Q-tip one. And I'm just going to kind of touch around it. Now there's a way that runs. But when you're doing it this way and you're doing it light, it'll go around and around and around in there like that. Now, to me this is too thick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. And I like putting a little bit of the oil in here with this grease in this style of bearing. And to me, all I'm doing is squirting and rolling it around. So I just roll it around in there. And then I'm going to come back with this one, just like that, and I'm just going to work it in there. And now it's all greased up. I'm not going to wipe it down again. I don't want it wiped down. I want it to stay greased all the way through. All the oil, I want it to all stay there. I'm just wiping off my fingers. And then, as you see in there, it only goes in a certain way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to easily just pop that right back in there, just like that. And that's how that goes in there. That rolls around this. Now if you remember, I put just a little grease on the outside of that. But that, and that having a little on there, is going to make that extremely smooth. And what we got to do is got to be really careful, because we don't want to knock these springs off, and we want to make sure that everything stays aligned. You put this back on. And as you see, I'm not doing a very good job, but there's a certain smooth little catch that goes in there. And then once you get it all back tight and close together, put your thumb, put pressure on this side, and hold this down tight. And then you replace your screws one at a time, but do not tighten them all the way down. And when you get the last one in, that's when you go ahead and make it snug. I'm not sure of how to get this bearing out. I'm just, if this goes bad, I'm not sure how this comes out. And somebody out there might know, but I don't see any pin or any way of getting that out. You may have to buy a new spool, I don't know. But I put a little dab of oil there. I just give this guy a good spin just to make sure that we're good in oil. And then I'm going to take some of the grease and just touch it up here just a little. And then rub it in with my finger. Because this one, that's where your casting comes when this free spins and runs through your reel and all that. That's what makes it free spin. So I'm going to put a little, not only did I put a little grease on there, I'm going to put a little oil. And then I'm going to put a little oil on this side. You'll see what I'm going to do here in just a second. I'm going to run this through. There's these little bars fit right into that groove just like that. You want to wiggle it till it actually drops into that gear. And now, as you see, that little thing comes out. This is your braking system. So I go back in and I touch this just a little and draw up a little bit of that oil that's in there that after it's come through, because you don't want it. You want to be able to use that pad, and we'll clean that to make sure that it's not slipping on that pad. We haven't broke this down, and honestly, this is all self-contained. This is all springs and different things in here that hold this in here and allow this to actually function correctly. I'm going to go ahead and give you a heads up. That is not something that I would take apart unless you were having problems with your braking system. And if you do, slowly take it apart, because there's springs and different things in there that's going to pop, and you're not going to know how to put it back in. Now, like I said, unless I'm absolutely having a horrible something going on, I'm not going to take this thing apart. This one's working fine. There is a set of bearings in here that's held in with an octagon clip. I'm going to try not to lose it. You can pop that one side off and grab it. And this is what this clip looks like. Now I will take these out. Those are magnets. That's why it's stuck to it. And see that bar there? I always like to go in there on those plates and just do just a little bit of clean. See, it ain't much. It's not hardly ever dirty in there, but I always like to just kind of clean it. Now, with this one going right back onto that plate, you kind of want to be a little careful. I'm going to just wipe this one down. I'm not going to put any of the spray on it, but I am going to put just a little of the oil. And when I say little, I mean very, very little. And I'm going to rub it in just a little bit. Spin it in my fingers, make sure we're still free spinning. Now, if I spin this and I feel crunching in it, then I'm going to actually go look for another bearing, or try to purchase another bearing and replace it, because those are closed bearings, and there's no, I mean, I sprayed and sprayed and sprayed, and this cleaner here has a straw that'll actually spray and actually can blast some of that out, but it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of working on it to get those clean, and sometimes you still can't get them clean, and there's still crud in them, and like dirt and gravel. So after I put a little oil on there, I'm going to replace this octagon clip, or whatever it's called. I call it an octagon clip. It's probably not. It's probably like a pentagram or something like that. But putting this back in is kind of difficult because of those magnets are really strong. But that's why having a set of tweezers to get that clip back in there. Make sure it falls all the way back into those grooves. It should have all those points on those grooves. Again, I want to send it back looking pretty good. So I'm going to give it a little squirt on my cleaning spray. Not too much, because I don't want it to go down in to this secondary braking system in here, this magnetic braking. I just want enough to knock the grime off the outside. And then I'm going to, after scrubbing it, I'm just going to wipe it down. Literally drops in like this and snaps closed. Alright, and that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and clean some of these and get it back together and give it a spin to make sure that we don't have anything that might have fell out of place or whatever. Now this one here on the top is the top. This one's the bottom. Now I'm going to clean these just by wiping them in my rag. Now some of my rags still have some cleaning solution on it, but that's okay. But I'm not turning it. I'm actually leaving it exactly the way that I picked it up. Okay, so that way this, and it's got a certain way it goes on. It goes on exactly the way. I'm going to do the same thing to the top. I'm not flipping it. I'm not turning it. I'm literally just knocking the dirt and grime off of it. Dropping it back on to the way it just come on. And see how that has that gap? That actually has to be that way. Now, this last piece, again, I wipe it all the way down. And some of these rounder pieces, instead of some of these thinner rounder pieces, I just take my shirt or my rag and I just run it around like that right there just to get the grime off. Because a lot of these pieces here are just you know, they're dirty. Now, and so now what I like to do after this is just to help protect them just a little bit. I go in and I take some of the oil. I just kind of tap around the edges, and it's going to run down a little, so you don't want to put too much. But I just wanted to, it helps preserve that and preserve that oil. And then don't forget to clean that. Take a rag, wipe it down. If it's really bad, if these are really bad, sometimes they get really, really bad. And so what I'll do is I'll actually get the cleaning spray out and different stuff. But see, this one, it's not bad at all. Doesn't have hardly any dirt or anything in there. It's real shiny. Looks pretty good. Now, be careful when putting these back on, because you can mess up the threads on this. If you don't put it on straight, you can mess up that thread. Now, you see that moving? Look how I got that. It's not straight. So you want to back this back off and just barely, you want to make sure you get that on just as straight as possible. Now, see how that's not spinning? Sometimes it doesn't go on because those threads have been damaged by something or whatever. Now, I'm going to hold this down here to keep it from spinning. Now, I'll wipe this off because this doesn't have any oil or anything on it. It's just grime. And that'll pop up there. And basically what this does is this right here just goes on a certain way. This basically just keeps from, and I'm just going to wipe this all the way down. I'll spray this too. But this basically keeps the drag and the reel arm from getting squished and on top of each other. Some have them, some have different styles. Like I said, I just sprayed that down. I'm not going to scrub it or anything because it doesn't need it. I'm just going to wipe it down with my rag. As you can see, it's good and clean. This goes on a certain way. You take this piece here. And I personally don't like to put this on very tight. I'm going just to snug. I can feel like snugness. And then you take this guy right here. It's pretty clean. And only adjust this in tightness if you do not line up. However, as you see, I just barely got it snug and we lined up just fine. You take that screw. Oh yeah, it's much better. Take one of, that one's clean. Take one of these, really scrub around down in there, get the grime out of it. Alright. See no spots or nothing in there, it had a spot in there. You take this, you might spin that around just a little more, and then you just kind of just put back on. And again, this is part of the braking part of some of the braking on the system. You don't want it to, you don't want to strip it. You do want to get it on straight. A lot of times this one has a rubber washer, so that way it seals and doesn't get grime in there. But forgive me, like I said, I normally don't do this all in one sitting. I normally come back to it, but the person or yourself will have to adjust your brake. I normally take it all the way down and then bring it all the way back up, or not all the way back up, but a good 3 or 4 good twists, I guess, to get it back up. And then that's it. That's your clean, new, greased up